Mr. President, President, Mr. Prime Minister, Sarah, High Representative Solana, Excellencies, generally distinguished people, that's all of you. It's an absolute honor and privilege to be with you here this evening. Thank you so much for inviting me. It is a particular honor to speak. Thank you. Toda. It gets a little limited after that. It's a particular honor always to be in the presence of Shimon Peres, who is an old friend of mine, but also a mentor. And I was just thinking when we were watching the earlier film about the great medical and scientific advances to allow us to live longer. I have a very simple suggestion, really, which would get round all of that, which is that we examine Shimon medically and then try and clone him. I also would like to say it is a pleasure also to be here and to have listened to a great speech from Prime Minister Netanyahu, who was Prime Minister, became a former Prime Minister, became Prime Minister again. Don't read anything into that. There are some things that should be imitated and some not. But actually, I was going to begin my speech to you by telling a story, if he doesn't mind, about Bibi. People often say I'm a friend of Israel, occasionally as a compliment. And actually, I'm very proud to be a friend of Israel. People occasionally ask me to explain this, and I sometimes tell them a story that is actually about Bibi. And this was when he was first Prime Minister, and we attended a very smart dinner at the King David Hotel in my honor. And there was myself and Bibi sitting there together, and the waiter, a rather old guy, brings in the soup. And as he's just about to put the soup down, Bibi kind of half turns towards him. Anyway, the guy puts the soup, spills it into Bibi's lap. Okay? Now, this is the thing. In many countries, including quite a few in this region, the waiter would have been in trouble. Okay? But this is Israel. And though I don't speak Hebrew, I could tell what the waiter was saying to Bibi, which is, why were you so stupid as to put your lap where I was going to put that soup? And the thing is, his reaction was, I'm really sorry. And I thought, well, that's democracy, and frankly, the people are the boss, and that's actually the healthiest form of government. I really want to make one very simple point to you today, and it is in a sense illustrated by the visit I made earlier today to Hebron, where I visited the tomb of the patriarchs, or as the Muslims say, the Ibrahimi Mosque, where Abraham rests. And when I was there, a Christian, with the governor, who's a Muslim, next door, people of Jewish faith worshipping, tourists there, people from different parts of the world. And there we all were in this place, which is very special, very historic, but also a place where you can see the consequences of conflict. And there was, as there often is, at least in my case, a protester. The protester shouted and so on. What was interesting was within an hour of my leaving, I was receiving texts and emails from friends in the world saying, have you been involved in some incident or other? And I reflected on the world in which we live today and the characteristics of this world. It is interdependent. The economic crisis, climate change, the issues of security, the issue between Israelis and Palestinians, which is an issue even on the streets of Britain, never mind here. It's an interdependent world. It's a world in which power is shifting east. It's amazing, isn't it, how quickly the G8 has become the G20, with China and India and Brazil and others there at the center of decision-making. And always the force of globalization pushing us together, the internet and the technology that it implies. And above all, a world that is moving so fast, the compression of time. And with this new and changing world comes the reaction. And the choice for us in my country, in yours, around the world is really this. In this era of globalization where change happens so fast and where we are pushed together, is our attitude to be open to this change, to understand and try and seize its potential, or is our attitude to be closed, to be fearful? And that distinction, open versus closed, is in my view as important, sometimes more important, than what is often a 20th century ideological distinction between left and right. You can see it in the debates over trade and protectionism. You can see it in the debates about immigration, where some people use immigration as a way of arousing people's fears. And you can see it too when we come to consider the challenge that this extremism presents to us in our world today. Sometimes people want to confine this extremism to one place. Actually, it is the tragedy and the challenge of the modern world that it is not confined to one space. It's there, yes, certainly, in the terrorism in Iraq or Afghanistan, Pakistan. But we could add Yemen or Somalia. We could add the conflict here, the conflicts elsewhere in this region, but we could also add places such as the Philippines, where I was recently, where they explained to me that in the extremism there, 150,000 people have died in the last 10 years in the battles over Mindanao. And most dangerous of all is when there is a state or a government prepared to sponsor it. And I want to make a point here about the issue to do with Iran that is different from the point often made. I believe it is completely irresponsible to allow Iran to acquire nuclear weapons capability.